And welcome into the Week 10 Trade Show. I'm your host, Ian Power, joined as always by Matt Vitale and sometimes by Frankie Santiago. We are here to break down probably the last week of trades for you guys before most leagues' trades deadlines go through, which something that I'm not really a fan of. In any league that I manage, I axe trade deadlines because why? It's fantasy football. You don't need to obey a trade deadline like it's the actual NFL, but I'm not going to get onto that particular can of worms right now. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good. Doing good. We had an unofficial little uniform today that Ian didn't want to conform to. The just plain white T-shirts. Mine far more expensive.
I'm sorry that I am sophisticated and wear a collar when I go to work, Vitale.
Didn't you put that on after? Regardless.
Hey,
we're also drinking a special right here. We got.
Yeah, Vitale, do you want to show the viewing audience the thing you picked today?
The ice cold 40 that we will be drinking. Yes.
Okay, Jake Peralta.
Yeah. Some nice Colt 45 for you at a low price of $3 a bottle.
But where are the two zigzags?
If you'll notice that mine and Frankie's look a little different, it's because I gave the option of going for the brass monkey.
You mean you and...
Well, I'm saying me and Frankie's look different.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Don't worry about you. All right? Ours look different because I went for the brass monkey, which, for the uneducated, uninitiated of you, that is a 40 with some OJ poured in, about usually from here and a little bit up. Makes a delightful drink that keeps you hydrated throughout the night.
Or dehydrated, either or.
If by uninitiated you mean those too young to know who the Beastie Boys are. It's weird to think there's a crowd out there who are like legitimately too young to know who the Beastie Boys are. Anyway, this is normally I would say it's our beer of the week. I don't really think this counts as beer, but it's our drink of the week.
Whoa. If we're gonna count Frankie's gooberish sour drink,
that's actually a beer at least. This is our drink of the week. There is definitely liquid in this.
There is
bottle.
some form of something in here.
Malt liquor, I believe, is what it's called.
It is. It says it on the bottle.
All right. Let's break down the news real fast before we dive into the show. David Johnson, who concussion on Sunday, was a DNP today. He is officially ruled unlikely to play Sunday. Still no word on Dave Montgomery, as he's a Monday game, but he's the other concussion to watch out for. Aaron Jones returned to full practice today, so he should be a full go this weekend against Jacksonville, which should be a recipe for fantasy points. Joe Mixon's still a DNP, not practicing, so hopefully you held on to Gio because you might get another week out of him. And honestly, starting to get a little concerned about Mixon. You know, when he went down, it was like, okay, yeah, he's a little banged up. They might hold him out through the bye, but he should be good after that. Like, coming out of the bye, not practicing is not typically what I like with my injured running backs.
Yeah. I just don't like injured running backs.
Yeah, the love for Mixon, it's like he's basically Le'Veon Bell, but on a different team. Like, that's how everyone's been touting him. So it's like he's just gonna break out and he's gonna be the number one back.
He gets injured like Le'Veon Bell used to.
Like, he was supposed to be so big, and he was supposed to, like, everyone was like, oh yeah, there'll be a year where he's getting drafted in the top 3. I don't think it's ever happening.
I mean, you can thank the Bengals O-line for that.
But I think you just full stop at the word Bengals there.
Yes, you can thank the Bengals for that. Justin Jackson was officially ruled DNP today. The coaching staff said they're resting him this week. It's unlikely he plays. So hopefully he went out there and grabbed Kalen Ballage, because it's Kalen Ballage season. He's gonna be the running back that saves us all.
What is the next news point? I don't want to talk about it.
Is this just the season where we just
keep Bizarro year?
We keep dragging up old fantasy names like, look at he can do something. Look at he can do something. Just let these guys just.
I mean, to be fair, I am mostly being facetious here. I don't actually really want to start Kalen Ballage at all. Like, if you're rolling him out there, it's with no measure of confidence. You know, he could go back to being Mr. like 0.7 yards per carry, Kalen Ballage, and Joshua Kelly could have the day. They could sign some random guy off someone else's practice squad. I don't know. I don't want any part of this backfield if it's not Austin Eckler.
Yeah, I would very much like to not have Joshua Kelly have a day, because I'm not starting him this week.
I don't think anyone is, because for some reason he just keeps not getting the start. He hasn't looked great out there. He started the season hot and then like it just slowed down for whatever reason. And when Kalen Balazs is outrunning you, that's a kind of damning point. So, but if you're hurting for a start, Kalen Balazs might be at least a flex-worthy contender this week. Kenny Golladay, DNP again, as we expected. They were saying he's probably going to be about 2 to 4 weeks with that hip. So hopefully you have gone out and acquired Danny Amendola, although this is not a great matchup for Lions receivers, so you might not want to start him this week anyway. Better news, Miles Sanders was limited today at practice, but he's at least back and practicing, which is more than you can say for Mixon. Or CMC for that matter, who was downgraded from day to day to week and has been officially ruled out this week already. So, like we were saying with the, hopefully you held on to Mike Davis or picked him up if he got dropped. You are definitely getting another week out of Mike Davis and potentially more, because usually they don't make you week to week if you're coming back next week.
I love it here.
T.Y. Hilton practiced in full today. It was an estimated practice. The Colts did not actually practice, so that could have just been like T.Y. Hilton on non-practicing legs. Like, yeah, I feel great. But like he goes into warm-ups and he's like, oh, there's the hammy, because that's T.Y. Hilton. So take that with a grain of salt, because T.Y. Hilton could literally be like a full go up until warm-ups tomorrow night and then not go. Big Ben in the COVID protocol. Close contact, doesn't actually have it, or potentially doesn't actually have it. He's still going to have to, pass all the COVID testing before he's allowed to play this weekend. If he doesn't play, that's obviously a downgrade to all Steelers players, not just their receivers. So keep an eye on that one. And then Baker, who's an intriguing streaming option this week, was activated from the COVID list. So he should be good to go this weekend. If you need a streaming option, you could do worse than Baker. You guys got any news that I did not key in on here?
No, just more COVID, more injuries, just like more players that people were raring to go, hoping for the season, or just out and not playing. Like Eckler's still out. Like people were hoping he was be back by now. Like,
to be fair, this was the week that everyone was like, if he comes back on the early time, it should be this week. People who were looking at 4 weeks were insane. Everyone was saying it's more likely 6 than 4. So I guess I was hoping that Eckler would be practicing this week, but this was like the soonest I was expecting him back.
Yeah, I was kind of banking on this, seeing as CMC was coming back, and
yeah, most people who traded for Eckler or who stashed Eckler on their bench and just rode out the injury, you were probably expecting more of him coming back for like the week 12, 13 playoff push, or literally coming back to help you in the playoffs, because he has a nice playoff schedule. Like, it's just, it's one of those injuries. It was a nasty injury. So, but if I had wood near me, I would knock on it that he comes back sooner rather than later, because he's
kind of wood. That's like
it's particle board.
Yeah, it's wood chips all mashed together.
Yeah.
Also, if you guys like what you see, like, comment, subscribe. Up there.
Frankie, I was about to get to that.
There.
Sniped ya.
All those guys.
Yes.
Ask us questions. I know I've already had a fair amount of people send me questions. I'll ask the guys, get their input on it. But yeah, don't be afraid to ask. I mean, it is that time of year where you're either getting those important wins or trying to win out of a consolation bracket if you're very unlucky.
Yeah.
But hopefully, if you're watching us, you're not in the consolation bracket and you're making your way to playoffs.
We are most responsive on Twitter, so make sure if you have questions, get at us on there. Probably next most responsive is comment on the YouTube videos. I try to check that a couple times a day. I know Frankie does also. So those are probably the two best areas to shoot us questions. If you send us questions on Facebook or Instagram, I can't promise anyone will see them.
It's just how it goes. Also, if you're sending a trade question, instead of just saying like this for this, send us a little more details.
Yeah,
like,
send us
at least about your own roster. Maybe a picture on if you've got if you're sending it through Twitter. Send us a shot of the rest of your roster, because it might look like a great deal. Then we see like, oh, that's your last running back. Ooh.
Yeah. In a vacuum, yes, you should trade Ronald Jones for Will Fuller, but if Ronald Jones is your only startable running back, no, you shouldn't trade Ronald Jones for Will Fuller.
Because there are currently, 7 startable running backs?
About that, maybe 8,
Yeah, hopefully you just held on to them, and when everyone was kicking and screaming at your door for them, you just kept holding, because they've been blowing up left and right, and there's about, like, as Frankie said, about 7 or 8.
Yeah. All right, you guys ready to get into the trade topics for this week? Well, Tally, seeing as you brought these
Gifts.
beverages to our table,
Bounty.
I need Bounty to pick this up after I pour it on the floor. Why don't you take us away?
Surely. So,
Don't call me shortly.
Yeah. I was not a fan of him coming into the season. I thought he might get a little more relegated because I figured the pass options might overshadow him too much, and Chubb, his efficiency on the ground, would kind of carry the day and leave little work left for Kareem Hunt. But
Sure.
he has shown that he has found his own little niche in this offense, and they clearly need him to function. And then people go, but what about Chubb? Chubb's gonna get his on the ground. It's like, yeah, he's gonna get his on the ground, but Kareem benefits from Chubb being there. Like, you look back at his points per game, like when Chubb was on the field, he was making hay. It slipped a little bit in Chubb's absence, and now that, after a bad game, only racking in about 7 fantasy points, Chubb's coming back this week. That owner might be, getting scared and thinking, maybe he needs to cut
Shaking in their boots.
Exactly. They might see a guy, they're like, oh, I can trade him now because he's Kareem Hunt. He's been by himself. He's had some solid games, but his, that 20-point game is long behind him. Go scoop him now. He has a solid, rest of season schedule. And on top of that, like I said, he's been producing like a low-end RB1 with Chubb there. Like I said, with Chubb, his points 8, 22, 12, 19.
Yeah.
Without Chubb, 15,
And that
5,
8 came
16.
against Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Like, so, and no, sorry, that was actually Baltimore.
Oh, excuse me, another very tough
Yeah,
one.
sorry.
That's right. They did start the season against
His
Baltimore.
5 was against Pittsburgh when he didn't have Chubb.
Yeah.
So, like, he produces against bad offenses. Like, so you at least can see the matchups coming with him. He's pretty predictable in that light. But people panic, especially at this late. If you've got a guy out there who's like, Chubb's coming back, I need wins. I might miss the playoffs, like something like that. Take advantage of these little things you can do to chip down the price to a point where you're winning the deal.
Well, and as someone who, I'm typically the guy who I'll buy into split backfields if I can identify who the primary guy is going to be, because there's still value to be had there. People don't like split backfields. So if you're talking to the manager who's been rostering Kareem Hunt to this point, and they've been enjoying what they thought was going to be a solo backfield while Chubb was gone, they're sitting there like, man, this guy can't produce by himself. What's going to happen when Chubb comes back? Like,
and speaking of that split backfield, like if you've been in a league for a while, people in your league, like there might have been that Mark Ingram syndrome, like when it was Ingram and Kamara together. Ingram was producing, but you couldn't sell him. You were getting nickels on the dollar for him, even though he was coming out there and being like producing almost as a low-end RB1 most weeks. Like, this guy is primed to give you solid production in a position that is so scarce right now. Don't pass up on him just because the lead back is coming back and he's going to get relegated to the bench. Remember, Odell Beckham's gone.
Yeah.
They need production.
Well, and we know Kevin Stefanski likes to run the football. He obviously does not want to throw with Baker any more than he has to. Chubb is obviously going to allow them to establish the run again, which can open up lanes for Kareem Hunt in the short passing game. And as you alluded to with his schedule, I mean, his only bad matchup rest of season is Baltimore in Week 14. That's it. Like, he gets the Jets in Week 16.
That could be a championship right there.
And the Giants in Week 15. Like, if you can make it past Baltimore in Week 14, he has like 2 league-winning matchups in the semifinals and the championship.
Yeah.
And if you have Week 17, then I don't know what his matchup is, because Week 17 championships don't matter.
Like,
Hey, all championships matter.
No.
We care about your leagues.
No. If you have a Week 17 championship, talk to your manager, whoever the commissioner is for your league.
Mutiny?
Yeah, mutiny. Because, you don't want to be that guy who's like, oh, I've got Kamara and I've got Michael Thomas. Oh, they're being rested because they're going to the playoffs and they already have a bye. Cool.
Yeah. Nothing feels worse than losing in Week 17 because you built a superstar team who lock up their playoff berth and don't play their starters in Week 17. And you're like, shit! I gotta start Marcus Johnson. Who's he?
Yeah, because even if they have a lockup, even if they've locked up the bye in Week 16, they have to keep their team going, because as we saw with Baltimore last year, when you rest too early, your team comes out real rusty.
Yeah, but Week 17, there's a realistic chance they get either a full game or at least half a game. the back Jameis Winston's coming out after halftime, and you're like, oh god.
Yeah.
Who's your trade away, Vitali?
My trade away is a quarterback that was lighting it up to start the season and has been regressed to the middle of the pack where he has been. People have been hoping he could stay in that top. That is going to be Mr. Josh Allen. His deep ball was cooking. He was, creating yards on the ground. He was doing everything you wanted. Like, it felt like the roles were reversed. Like Lamar Jackson was the subpar running quarterback with the deep ball, but he couldn't hit it. And Josh Allen was the guy hitting the deep ball and making plays. Like he was lighting up highlight reels to start the season, and now it's just kind of cooled off. And then on top of that, like his regression is clear, but then on top of that, he doesn't really have that great of a schedule going forward. So you're losing him next week for a bye. Then he's got the Chargers, San Fran, Pittsburgh, Denver, New England. Those are all defensive-focused teams. All of them. And, New England, say what you want. You still have to... If you think New England's going to be a shell of itself in Week 16, which...
I mean, you also, you saw the Jets, Joe Flacco go off against them this weekend. They didn't have Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah, exactly.
He's going to be coming back.
Like, Gilmore's going to be back. And on top of that, you need to get to 16. You have to get to your championship with Josh Allen, who's probably your only quarterback because the waiver wire is dry, and this is the guy you probably drafted and held as your only quarterback because he's been cooking. Like, you're looking at, you probably can coast in the playoffs because of how well he started and if you've been managing your team well, but let's say you slip and you don't get that bye. You're versing Pittsburgh week 1. Ready to go, playoff ready, looking for a ring. Pittsburgh in week 14. It's at home is the only upside I can give him. But then he goes to Denver, and then he goes to New England. I'm like, those are terrible matchups, and he still has some name value. He played well. He just had a great game against Seattle. Sell him now. He just dropped 40 points against the Seahawks. Like, he's got Arizona, which should be a decent matchup. It should be a shootout between him and Kyler. So, great points that you can sell somebody on. Like, hey, you don't really need, the bye's not going to hurt you too much. Or maybe you've got a backup guy you can send with him to cover the bye. Like, sell this guy while he's got value because it's gonna evaporate after week 11.
Yeah. I don't know if Josh Allen is a big enough piece by himself to just sell. Like, he's not Patrick Mahomes or Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson. So you might not be able to get something straight up for him, but he is a very nice cherry that you can put on a deal.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going after, like a Keenan Allen or someone like that, and you're like, oh shit, I need something to get this deal done. Maybe they're streaming quarterbacks. Maybe they had Matthew Stafford, they're flipping between like him and like Ryan Tannehill or something. You can just throw him in there, like now you don't have to stream quarterbacks anymore. You just get this guy.
Or if you happen to own, like, maybe you have Stephon Diggs too, and
package him with Diggs and just get rid of that entire team.
People are like, oh, you have these two pieces that complement each other. So whenever Diggs is scoring touchdowns, I mean, I would hope Josh Allen's scoring touchdowns, but
you talk about this past week, be like, whenever they go off, you get that money. It's just like,
sounds like you're a little down on Stephon Diggs, Frankie. I feel like there's a reason for that, but just like as a wrapping up point, like that's exactly how I would trade him. Look for those right now. He has value, has name value. He's a running quarterback in a running quarterbacks league. Like, go out, sell him to a team that thinks they're in championship mode right now, and they're like, oh, I already have great running backs and I've got solid wide receivers. I just need to fill in quarterback and tight end or something like that. So you're like, all right, I'll give you, I'll take one of your, solid depth wide receivers. Like maybe they've got an extra guy or something like that. Yeah. You go out and take that, I don't know, whatever you need. Like maybe you go for Gurley because Gurley's been on the sell market. You go for Gurley and you send him like Gibson and Allen for Gurley. You just get something back to keep your team afloat and give yourself a boost in a place you're weak.
Or like Tyler Boyd's a nice boring name.
Yeah,
no one's ever excited to roster Tyler Boyd for some reason.
Robert Woods.
Yeah, just be like, hey, do you want Josh Allen for Tyler Boyd? Like, I bet you there's a good amount of fantasy managers out there who'd be like, sure. Like, unless they already have a quarterback. It's like, yeah, they're just... I agree. I was on the sell Stephon Diggs train last week. By proxy, you also want to sell his supporting cast. Yeah, that's a good one. Frankie, you want to take us away with your two?
What can I say about Terry McLaurin?
Probably nothing.
Other than the fact that he is very good at football. It started off pretty decently slow, minus that one Arizona game. 8 points to 25 to 10. So he's been a little bit up and down. But over the last 3 he's played, he's averaging about 20. He's averaging about, I think my math's right, it's about 85 a game, a touchdown. So, I mean, he has one bad matchup the rest of the year against a top 10 defense, which is Carolina. Everybody else, Detroit next week, Cincy, Dallas, which is a blessing, Pittsburgh. While they are a very good defense, you can throw on Pittsburgh. San Fran looks like they don't even want to play football anymore. Again, better run defense than pass defense. And, I mean, he's looked good. He's sitting right now at, I think, wide receiver 9. So he's in that bottom end wide receiver 1. You're probably going to have to pay value for him because, I mean, he's looked very good. He's averaging double-digit targets a game. And he is, while he's not like that ceiling volume guy like Allen Robinson or Keenan Allen, he's doing a lot with his catches. He's getting those touchdowns. He's getting that yardage. And he's on a team that is going to need to throw the ball a lot. And I think that I mean, I wouldn't overpay for him. I wouldn't give away, I don't know. I mean, I would trade Stephon Diggs, but I don't know. I'm not gonna completely shell out, but if I can get him for cheap by somebody who's maybe not paying attention, I mean, I'm all for getting Terry McLaurin.
Sure.
Yeah, I like him. He's got a lot of. Washington's been pretty bad, and as a team, and you're gonna be gifted a lot of negative game scripts where they're gonna have to throw. And Terry's the only guy they're willing to really, lean on. So I think he's a shoe-in for just continuing to just eat targets.
Also,
Yeah, I the only thing I worry about a little bit is that his depth of target will come down with Alex Smith. Alex Smith isn't known for hucking the deep ball. I still think Terry is a great rest of season play, but I do downgrade him a little bit with Alex Smith under center because while the balls coming his way might be better balls than Kyle Allen could throw, they're not going to be as deep. So he's going to have to do more with his legs after the catch to make his hay, or he's going to have to get a large increase in volume.
Also, if somebody is trying to get you to pay a lot for Terry, you can just kindly remind him he is in the NFC East. So he's probably not going to do a lot. You just want him as like that depth piece,
Well, I don't know how well it's going to work because Terry's been kind of popping this season, but you can't tell him to ignore the box score in front of them. But no, I think that Terry is a good trade for. Like I said, the only like word of caution I would have is just that Alex Smith could bring his ceiling down, but I think Alex Smith brings his floor up. So, it's a little bit of a trade off. And honestly, floor plays aren't bad at this part of the year where where a goose could kill you.
On the reverse side of that, a guy who I am selling, partially because of the emergence of Dalvin Cook as being the healthy workhorse that, I mean, he could get injured, but he could not, and he could just pull a Derrick Henry of last year. Adam Thielen has not looked great over the last couple of games. I think he's averaging 8 fantasy points, 40-something yards. Before that, he looked really good. He started off really hot, and he was pretty much playing, as Vitale said, to start the year, a very consistent wide receiver. He has, I will throw Tampa in there because they're barely outside of the top 10. 4 out of the next 6 less ideal matchups. He plays Chicago, bright spot of Dallas in there, Carolina, Jacksonville, another bright spot.
I like how just no matter who's going up against Dallas, like Dallas, bright spot. It's like it could be the Jets against Dallas. You're like, yeah, bright spot.
Well, they're the 27th ranked defense against the receiver, but and then to end the year, Tampa, Cincy, New Orleans, who on paper is looking like a bright spot, but I mean, as we saw last week, they're coming back into positive regression. I mean, he just hasn't looked good at all. He's 5 targets. 2 of those are wins and on the back of Dalvin. But, I mean, the one in Atlanta, I mean, what's the excuse for there? I mean, they were down. They lost 23-40. So it's not game script. It's games where the top corner's on him, where he's not performing well or not catching balls. I mean, he has a pretty high catch percentage, but I don't know. I think the way Dalvin's playing, and I mean, Kirk Cousins just, I don't know, maybe they paid him, but they don't want him to throw the ball.
Just to quickly answer what happened with Week 6, his name is Justin Jefferson, 166 yards, just so you know.
So you can't use 2 receivers?
And what happened in the other weeks was Dalvin Cook.
Yeah. So I'm not against the selling Thielen. I think you want to own, like, you either want to try and gamble for the cheaper guy and get Justin Jefferson, or you want to just try and grab the floor play of Thielen. I do still like this offense just because it's producing, and Cook keeps the ball, at least keeps the ball on offense. Like, one thing that's bad, yes, a bad team usually has to play from behind, has to throw, but a bad team also has a lot more 3 and outs. I don't worry about that too much with this team, and I think right now, we're seeing what happens if Dalvin takes over a game, which is now an inherent risk you have to just bake in. But trying to sell now after both of their receivers' poor games, given that Dalvin just produced over 400 yards plus himself, like, if he keeps doing that, boy howdy, you're going to be feeling great as a Dalvin owner. But you want him to taper off, because ideally, if you're owning Dalvin, you've been killing it this season because you're one of the few people with an elite running back who's been just tearing it up. But you want him to start calming down. You want to see a 15, 16 carry game to rest those legs to the playoffs, because we know that there's a shelf limit on this kid. I'm just thinking there's probably a bounce back game in here coming up where one of these guys will pop and then you can sell them, because I do agree that, the playoff schedule is a little rough. So selling them, definitely I'm on that train. Right now, probably not the best time because you're going to have to sell them decently cheap.
Oh, I'd sell them after the Dallas game. Because, I mean, that's going to be the one game, really, where before playoffs where you can afford to sell them.
So my only word of caution there is, one, Dallas is susceptible in all facets of the offense. It doesn't matter what you do against Dallas, you're going to score. Dallas could easily be a Dalvin week where you don't see much throwing because it doesn't matter, because Dalvin runs, 29 times for 742 yards against the Cowboys. Like, Minnesota does have, I personally believe that, yes, while it looks dire right now and you might not be getting full price for Thielen, you still want to get rid of Thielen now, because Thielen does have, according to Fantasy Pros, one of the, they're bottom 6 strength of schedule rest of season for their wide receivers. So, like, outside of Dallas, like, I imagine Dallas is one of the reasons that that's buoying.
Yeah, it's Dallas and Jacksonville. Because, I mean, other than that, you're playing top 11 defenses.
So, like, you might not have many chances left because they're not going to have to throw much against, like, Dallas and Jacksonville aren't going to be able to keep up with Minnesota. So they aren't going to have to throw much to, put them in the dirt. You can gamble and try and hold them, but it's a little bit like trying to call the ceiling or call the floor in stock trading, where it's like sometimes it screws you. And if you try and wait for a bounce back to try and call the ceiling and get out, you could never get a bounce back, and you just get stuck with a dud. Yeah,
it's also like, I mean, we talk about how safe of a floor Thielen is, but I mean, with the emergence of Justin Jefferson, I mean, if he's only getting 5 targets a game and an offense that doesn't like to throw.
We always expected that there was going to be a second option in Minnesota. We didn't expect that the ceiling on the targets was going to come down to, like, none.
Yeah, that's my main issue with it. I mean, he's just not an offense that can support 2 wide receivers, clearly.
I would try and move him now and sell, like, you have to actually go and talk to the manager you're trying to sell him to. I know that's a terrible, forbidden topic, but open a line of dialogue with the manager you're trying to sell him to. Be like, hey, you know what? Yeah, sure. Thielen had some down games. Dalvin popped. Is Dalvin going to go for 200 yards every week rest of season? Probably not.
Hopefully not week 16.
And, Thielen does have Jacksonville and Dallas coming up. Like, you trade for him now, capture those good games, right? Sell someone on those 2 good games still being on the schedule, ignoring the fact that those are also good games for Dalvin, and just get the risk off your team. See if you can flip him for, I don't know, like a Keenan Allen or Allen Robinson, AJ Brown maybe. Target these other, like, high-end wide receiver 2s, low-end wide receiver 1s, and see if you can just get a flip off. Talk to them on the wide receiver 1 status of Thielen and the great upcoming schedule supposedly, and pull a big sneaky on him.
Disclaimer: we do not condone dishonest trading on this show.
That's not dishonest trading, though. That's just tradecraft. Dishonest trading would be trying to trade an injured player and denying their injury or something. Trying to get them off your team right after the injury, hopefully before people saw it or the news comes out.
Or trading Jacoby Jones because NFL only does first initial in trades.
Yes, yeah, stuff like that. Selling someone on the strength of schedule for a player and not believing the strength of schedule yourself. That's just taking a calculated risk.
Ian, take us away with your picks.
Very well. I've got a couple hot ones lined up here.
Oh no, that's a different YouTube show.
What?
Go on.
Okay. My trade for might surprise you guys. It's Jonathan Taylor. And it's a simple equation for me as to why he's the trade for, and that is that you don't have to pay much for him to get him. He's disappointing fantasy managers so much at this point that people are dropping him. You might be able to get him for like a Jerry Jeudy, or like a Emmanuel Sanders, basically a nothing wide receiver 3, Mike Williams, flip him for that or something. It's like his value is so low right now that people are just done with him. They don't want to keep him on their roster anymore. They're tired of high expectations and rolling him out there only for him to let them down. But that's probably coming to an end soon. He has the second best strength of schedule over the rest of the season. He doesn't face another tough matchup until Week 16 against Pittsburgh. Aside from that, it's green rest of the year. He was the lead dog last week until he coughed up the rock. Frank Reich, was still preaching confidence in him. It seems like that was just a you can't be fumbling on this team, rookie. Here, ride the bench for the day, because he came out and he was the lion's share of the carries and until he fumbled, and then he had one touch the rest of the day. So clearly the Colts still believe in him. They invested highly in him. He has an easy schedule. The Colts aren't making the playoffs by making Phillip Rivers throw to Michael Pittman and Zach Pascal and Marcus Johnson. They just don't have the weapons through the air to have Rivers carry them with his arms. So they're going to have to run it. We know what Wilkins and Hines are. We've seen them for many years in the NFL. It's the whole old dog new tricks thing. You can't expect someone who's been a journeyman, with the exception of Raheem Mostert and Darrell Williams. Those are the only two guys I can think of in recent memory who were just kind of just kicking around the NFL, and then managed to find their stride. It's like that just doesn't happen. People are bad and get traded around to other teams and become journeyman players because they aren't good enough to be the stars of their team. Jonathan Taylor is good enough to be the star of his team, and I think this stretch play here could prove it. When you can trade for a guy that could literally win you your league with how good he could be over the rest of the season and pay almost nothing to get him, that's a trade for me. No dissenting takes?
No, like I said, I always like trying to buy in on a running back that's got a depressed value right now because, as we've been saying, there are not a lot of running backs right now.
Sure.
So, buy right now. If you actually have a deadline coming up, you have to buy before it's closed. But
and for Taylor, you have to buy before tomorrow, basically, because Tennessee isn't a good run defense. If he goes off against Tennessee tomorrow, Taylor owners are finally going to be like, yes, finally, and then you're never getting him. And then my trade away is none other than Derek Jeter Chark. I don't know if that's actually what DJ stands for, but I'm just assuming.
Think it's Dwayne Johnson.
No, it's a completely different person. DJ Chark is someone who I am actively trying to get off of my roster in all formats over the rest of the season. His strength of schedule going forward is okay, unless you're looking at the playoffs, in which case he gets Baltimore in Week 15 and Chicago in Week 16. Both very tough defenses. I mean, Chicago just shut down Tennessee, who's a much better offense than Jacksonville. He also just had a huge game. It was against the Texans, so take it with a grain of salt. Anyone can go off against the Texans. So it's easy to sell him right now, or maybe at least easier than it was, because you can be like, oh, look, see, All they needed was to get rid of Minshew. Minshew had a broken hand. Competent quarterback, throws a lot to him. Big game, money, money, money. And you can sell him based on that. You're not going to get, a king's ransom for him, but he's at least probably trading at fair value right now. And that might end this week. The Packers are really good against wide receivers. Jair Alexander's really good at football. You could see DJ Chark get shut down this week, and all of a sudden that window is slammed shut. You aren't trading him anymore. Or if you are, you're basically paying someone else to take him. It's like their quarterback is still Lutton, a guy who, as I said before, wasn't good enough to break the starting lineup while Minshew was playing with a broken hand. Like, he's going to have bad games. He's not going to look as good as he did last week against the Texans. And when he has bad games, they could be really bad, like Tua against the Rams bad, but with more picks. He's just a very high-risk player to me. And this is the time of year where I don't want high-risk players. I'm fine trading him to someone else's teammate, hopefully another competitor, and just hope that he's a landmine and drags them down with him. Wouldn't it be great if you trade DJ Chark to someone that you expect to see in the playoffs, and then he drops a goose on them in week 15, and you're just like, yes, suck it, as you just ride past them, beating them with the player they traded you? He's a player that's very risky and currently has a nice little recent fantasy total attached to his name that you can use to spin into a deal to go get someone else.
I agree with everything you said, and I'm avoiding Jags players at all costs. That's why one of my tradeaways was James Robinson a couple of weeks ago. I just think that offense is struggling to find their footing. I mean, Lutton, I agree, is going to have... He had a fine game. He's going to not have those all the time.
Sure.
I'm selling all my Jags, selling all my Cowboys. Completely unrelated, but...
Well, no, they're not. They're both terrible teams. Fighting for that first overall pick.
Well, no, the Jets have that locked up pretty much.
You say that, but the Patriots could lose to them later in the season and, throw a wrench in there.
Yeah, the Jags do have some rough matchups coming up ahead. So after that pop game, if you're looking to get those Jags off your team, this is the time to sell.
Yeah, you got to go out and be aggressive, but you can move them. All right, let's jump over to our starts of the week and money picks. So an update on the scoring. Last week, Vitaly and I entered into a jersey bet to see who was going to exit the season with the best overall record. Last week, we both got 3 out of 4 right, so we're both 20 for 36 at this point. Keeping it neck and neck. Frankie, you are pulling up the rear at 13 for 28. Jeff, once again, did not enter any picks, so he is staying static at 11 for 20.
I'm making a comeback, boys.
No, you're not.
I am.
I mean, if you want to get in on it, Frankie, we can do it based off percentage, I guess. But I mean, you're pretty far down there, so I don't know if you want to catch these hands. No,
I'm good.
Okay, cool.
I was doing that in my head.
But yeah, for our starts of the week this week, I'll start it up here. I am recommending that people start Carson Wentz against the New York Giants and Jalen Reagor against the New York Giants. There may be some correlation there. Most of the Giants are terrible and can't stop anyone from doing anything against them. Jalen Reagor looks like he should be a good piece on that team. Also, the Eagles still have no one to throw to aside from Fulgham. Fulgham? Whatever.
It's Fulham.
They should both be able to put up perfectly serviceable fantasy days with I think pretty attractive ceilings. And then for my money picks, I'm recommending James Robinson against Green Bay for 6,600. While Green Bay is a formidable pass defense, they blow against the run.
They are awful against the run.
So James Robinson at 6,600 is a steal to me because I don't know what Green Bay can really do to stop him. They can't sell out to stop James Robinson because Jacksonville's still capable of throwing on you. It's not their primary way of attacking you, but they're still capable of it. So it's like James Robinson should have running room against them at 66. I think it's a really intriguing price point. It's cheap enough where I think you can squeeze him in there with some other studs and get a good lineup going. And then Eric Ebron versus Cincinnati, 4,400. I just really like the price point against him. Cincinnati's really bad against the tight end. Vance McDonald is on the COVID list, I believe. So the tight end room is shrinking in Pittsburgh, which should only mean good things for Ebron. And if Big Ben's out, I don't know who the backup is for Pittsburgh, honestly, but tight end tends to be a safety valve for people. So honestly, if Big Ben's out, then I'm even more in on Ebron because they'll likely lean on him to keep the ball moving. So, and at 4,400, like I said, great price.
Yes.
But Tyler, what do you got?
Well, my better picks. I'm going for my starts. I'm going to take J.D. McKissick versus Detroit.
Sure.
Detroit's real banged up right now, and we just heard Antonio Gibson has a shoulder injury, so he might be either limited
So
or...
you're saying it's J.D. McKissick season?
Yes. As much as I hate to see it, McKissick is the guy for this game. So he should be able to utilize a, dink and dunk quarterback in Alex Smith in a game that should favor Washington in a game that is missing their feature back. So I think everything's aligning where he should be an easy lock start for you. My other start, Brandon Cooks. Cooks and Fuller have been cooking. They get Cleveland this week. I have no qualms about that. If they're blanket the top corner over Fuller, because he has been kind of the guy for them recently, I think Cooks should be able to just be he's a name that for some reason is boring, but it should be able to just produce for fantasy managers.
I mean, he's once again on track for 1,000 yards.
That's just what he does.
I do want to say, because I feel like it's kind of gone under the radar, but Cooks has honestly kind of replaced Fuller as the number one in Houston.
He's looked really good.
Like, Fuller keeps getting the yardage that suggests he's the number one, but like if you look at the targets, Cooks has passed Fuller in targets on a week-to-week basis. So, and he's been very consistent on what he's been receiving. So I'm all for that. I think that you can take advantage of that depressed price point and basically get Will Fuller for far less than what you have to pay for Will Fuller.
Yeah. He's not one of my monies, but he is definitely someone I wouldn't be afraid of using in a money spot.
Oh, I'm looking at him in both.
My monies are Miles Sanders against the Giants. Surprise, surprise. I'm also targeting that matchup. A nice, fresh, as healthy as they can be Eagles going against the Giants. Miles is only at 6,400. I mean, this guy should have been easily a price above guys like, should be above guys like James Robinson, but because he's been injured for a while, coming off an injury, he's playing the Giants. I think there's going to be room for him to run. They're going to need somebody to be a focal point, and they're going to want to lean on a guy that they've invested heavily in, and the coach has been talking glowingly of. So I think we're going to see the breakout of the pop that is going to be the end of the season for Miles Sanders here. And then for a nice cheap play, I'm going with Tim Patrick versus the Raiders. The Raiders can be thrown on, and Jerry Jeudy is banged up this week. Limited, or was he limited or out? That's what I couldn't remember. But definitely
check real fast.
Yeah.
When I was going through the injury news, I didn't see him on the in dire straits.
I believe
list,
he was out of practice for today. When I last heard, a beat reporter for the Broncos reported that.
I'm double checking.
But yeah, go ahead and pull that up for me. But either way, Tim Patrick, he has been sneaky good this year. Like, nothing flashy, but he's been getting like 7 to 8 targets a game. Like, the offense needs to throw because as a team they're not that great, and we know Vegas can put up points if they need to. So it's a matchup where I'm not scared of the defense. Where Tim's going to be.
Looks like Jeudy was a DNP today.
DNP, that's what it was. DNP with a shoulder. I hear shoulders are important to catching balls. So it's a situation where Jeudy might play and end up being a smokescreen for Tim to, rake in a few balls. We've seen him this season catch a few deep ones. Like, he is a sneaky good option, and he's only costing you 49, so you can get some real studs in your lineup with him.
Fair enough.
Frankie?
Targeting a different game. Jared Goff versus Seattle is one of my starts.
You don't want to grab the last Eagle that we didn't take, Goddard?
No. I'm liking the Seattle matchup a little bit more because this is all the speakings of a shootout. Similar to what we saw with the Arizona game.
Is it because it's the Seattle defense and every game against them is a shootout?
Yes, and also I feel like Jared Goff's not going to get picked as much.
Is it because it's the Seattle defense and they don't present a challenge to anyone?
Not even the Cowboys or the broken Patriots. But along with Goff, I mean, bonus pick here. I'm just going to jump down to my monies real quick. I have Robert Woods as one of my monies. A little bit pricey at 6,600, but I think the way this game's going to go, it's going to be a back and forth, not really scoring game, or scoring rather than a not game, to phrase it a little differently. But I think he's definitely going to hit value there. I mean, he's looked good in good matchups, and I mean, Ian, you just addressed the Seattle defense doesn't like to play football. So,
Seem to be a habit with them.
Jumping back up to my starts, for different reasons than James Robinson, I've actually pivoted off of one of the starts I had down here to Aaron Jones, because while the Jacksonville Jags are not exactly the toughest run defense, I think that for a different reason, the Packers are going to be up in this game heavy, and they're going to be running the football. And, I mean, this is going to be kind of Aaron Jones' return to form. I mean, he was, air quotes, limited last week versus San Fran.
So now, just for my own edification, because you just did a hot swap on us, is Aaron Jones a start or a money?
He is a start.
Bold, you know?
Yeah, that's a real bold take there, saying that one of the best running backs in football is a start against one of the worst run defenses in football.
Bold, one might say.
And to round it off with another Jones.
Wait, Frankie, I see in the show notes here that your other start was Jordan Reed.
I want to check the show notes again.
Better check again.
But 5,300 at Carolina. Carolina looking like more formidable pass defense this year than a run defense. Also, Ronald Jones isn't only going to get 4 carries this week, I would hope. I think Brady's going to return to form, especially with all those weapons. This will be one of his up weeks, hopefully. And for same reason as Aaron Jones, they're going to be up in this game. And, I mean, Ronald Jones, obviously, while not having that ceiling that's super high, he's looked good most of the season so far. So I don't see any reason why he can't hit value here.
Yeah, I do like Rojo. He's a bit of a gamble, and I think you're getting that baked into his price at $5,300 because he has been coughing up the rock, and we know how much Brady loves that. So he could get scripted out if he looks poor and they need someone to just close the game out. I could see Leonard Fournette just punching it his way just slowly down the field and stealing all that work. But Rojo against Carolina should be money for you.
Okay. Well, that'll do it for us for the trade show. Join us tomorrow as Frankie finally rejoins the countdown show. We break down the slate for you guys, and hopefully your trades go through swimmingly and none of you get screwed by the trade deadline.
I think that's you.
Yeah,
I think it is me.
Yeah, I think it is Vitali this week. So Vitali, why don't you close the show out with your last word of 40s?
I was just keeping track of you guys in case I was getting to I had a nice lead, so I knew if I needed to prepare one. I couldn't really think of anything that was jumping off the top of my head that isn't just the same stuff we've been hearing thrown at us, like the election stuff and COVID and all that stuff. So I want us to talk about a brighter point in our lives, a guy we don't give enough credit to. Also, just a quick, because I have the platform, just a quick RIP to the entirety of the SNL Jeopardy show. Basically, we lost Burt Reynolds.
Not the actors, but
we lost Burt Reynolds a few years ago. Sean Connery and Trebek, and in true Sean Connery fashion, he had to beat his rival to heaven. So, sucks that they're both gone. And never forget that Connery's last movie was Alan Quartermain and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where he died. One of his only movies he's ever died in.
It was bad luck.
To my real point about a gentleman that we need to appreciate more, some people have been getting on the train, but that is going to be Mr. Keanu Reeves. This guy came into the acting world not so hot in a vampire movie.
What are you talking about? Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was great.
It was a cult hit. People didn't appreciate them. They just kind of took it as a stoner classic. He did a movie, Bram Stoker's, where he did one of the worst English accents I've ever seen. Took some time off and then exploded back on the screen with Matrix, and then he just kind of disappeared from our lives. We got the sad Keanu meme, and that's about it. And then just John Wick, and then he's doing all these movies, all these charities. He's every time you see him with a fan, he's taking time out of his schedule to make sure he can take a picture with them. He's doing video games. He's doing everything now, and he's just taking over. So if there's a Mr. 2020, if there is a bright spot in this crappy year that we've had that's been a decade, it's Mr. Keanu. John Wick, I was starting to hate action movies because they're bland, redone, just grab an old action hero, throw him in there, just make him blow stuff up. We got something realistic that I can actually sink my teeth into and think like, this has some decent plot. They're taking it seriously. It's not just like Sylvester Stallone just killing people that are half his age and for some reason can't outmuscle him. Like, basically in summation, Keanu Reeves is the man, and I think we should appreciate him a little bit more.
I did watch Knock Knock on Netflix yesterday. That was a weird movie, but I appreciated it.
Keanu's great. I have no qualms with that. All right. Well, like I said, join us tomorrow for the Countdown Show, where it's finally the three of us again, unless Frankie ditches last moment.
We're going to have to teach Frankie how to do it.
Frankie, the Countdown Shows where we talk about matchups.
There's these football games that
what's a
happen on
matchup?
Sundays.
We'll see you guys all tomorrow. Adios.